Alright guys, such comic again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So after winning the World Championship yet again, Shotzzy's telling all as to what happened behind the scenes with OpTic last year. Could probably write a whole book on the situation, but the Kenny, Pred, Huke, Dashy, Mercules, Skies related drama that happened over the last few months has been absolute chaos this season, and Shotzzy reveals that him and Kenny definitely had a different approach to the way they wanted to play this game. They would often be butting heads over this fact, and nobody else on the team at the time wanted to say anything about it. What does that mean for the way that that team was and the way that it is today, and also what Kenny is like as a teammate for the good and for bad? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. This was from Envoy, and I saw this and I thought, could that be that famous World Championship throne thing that they had that they won back in 2020 that Huke was sitting on? It's not that. They just did an announcement for like a Halo pack or whatever. But still, people have been talking about whether Envoy are coming back in. What's that going to look like? Vivid was tweeting out hashtag time to fly because I think FlyQuest. I'm sure this is like League of Legends related stuff, but I'm just putting it out there obviously that we're kind of expecting some rumours over the next few weeks, months, who knows, about what potential organisation changes we may or may not see. Are Boston going to stay? Are Ravens going to stay? Like, what does that look like, right? Are these organisations getting sold? We know that there's some interest from Saudi teams coming in as well, but there's other organisations that also might be interested. Do Envy want to get back involved? Do we see expansion? Let's be honest, probably not yet. Maybe we never will. Who knows? Talking of Vivid though, he also tweeted this out about the new update to COD. So over the last few days, it's become increasingly clear Black Ops 6 is in a bit of a shambles right now, and it's kind of crazy because usually the game launches and it's in a bit of a shambles, right? But then as time goes on, they fix it, they take some time off over Christmas, and then they come back in January, they drop a big update, and the game slowly gets better. Pretty rare that Treyarch seemingly have just said, you know what, yeah, we don't care anymore. We're just going to focus on Black Ops 7. And everything's an absolute mess. We talked about it yesterday, the implications for the World Cup, because Codcaster right now doesn't work. So if you want to watch scrims, you've got to watch in spectator mode. How does that work in terms of we're going to try and play at the World Cup and watch the games? You know, the guy who's in the Codcaster, is that going to work? Like, we don't really know. It's probably going to be a bit of a mess. And Purge says, the game is actually gone. I can't even put a barrel on my gun. So apparently this is an issue as well, is that in CDL modes, the classes are broken and it's just a complete mess. Bean says, well, Bean just talking about it. People are crazies talking about it. But Purge says the game is broken. Even Hixie says the way that the CDL rules and caster have been neglected this year has to be a running joke with the devs. Can't be, can't get certain settings blocked on CDL like auto tac, and caster gets worse and worse with every patch. It's been broken for 6 months. How is it even possible? It is crazy, right? Like, I don't understand what they're cooking over there, because I thought the CDL just broke the viewership record, which it did, surprisingly maybe, in Kitchener, but, we had more viewers for that World Championship Grand Final than we've ever had in the history of COD for any previous tournament. The CDL, I wouldn't say it's looking in a great spot. There's plenty of things that are wrong with it, but competitive Call of Duty is at least in a solid place. But for some reason, they still don't seem to care, and the developers just have no intention of fixing the Codcaster, which has been broken for months. And it's very confusing because surely the CDL, as an organisation, like, they're part of Activision, right? Like, it's part of the whole thing. Activision, Microsoft give the money for the $2 million World Championship to happen. It's not like this is all completely outsourced and the COD League is purely an external party that has the license to run the esport on behalf of them, in which case it would still not be ideal. But if that organisation was to reach out to the developers and say, hey, can we fix this? Maybe it'd be really nice for us. You'd expect that conversation to be a little bit more challenging than a conversation when it's literally all part of the same thing. Like, they advertise the CDL in the game sometimes, although not anywhere near as much as they should, and the game's still broken. Clay says, love not having Codcaster for the last few weeks of the season, sat watching one player POV without a map and all red kill feed. Absolute class. You can't select a class, you get blue kill feed, or you enlarge map to see all 4 arrows. The 4 arrows thing might be worse than the POV with a flip menu up and no red arrows. So, like, Glacier as a coach is trying to figure out, goddamn, we're nearly at the end of this game's life cycle and I'm still trying to mess around to find out what's the best way to watch my team play, because Codcaster simply doesn't work. So it's an absolute shambles, but let's get into what we want to talk about with this OpTic team. Here they are sitting down for what seems like a bit of a press conference, as we know. I think they got like themselves a week off or whatever from content after they won champs. There was talk, okay, maybe they're going to sit down, do the full-on media tour, but I think they took a few days away. And fair enough, they certainly earned it. And here they are back yesterday, scrimming again, going into the World Cup. How serious they're going to take it, how serious the other teams are going to take it, that is a question. But I will say for OpTic, it's semi-important. People are always going to throw around the Simp question mark if he's potentially available. And as a result, I think OpTic would, they would like to make finals or win in Riyadh, because then they kind of shut down any questions, I think, as to whether they would need to make a change. But speaking of Shotzzy, he's had a lot to say on stream over the last few days, and it's good to see. I mean, Leaksy's back at it again. The season's over, kind of. They won, so he can talk about an awful lot of things. And he's had a lot to say on how the team went this season, because it was a complete shambles, and it probably was going to remain a complete shambles until Mercules became available. Then they signed him, then the rest is history. But at the start of the season, of course, as we know, they still had the team that won the World Championship last year. Shotzzy, Dashy, Pred, Kenny, and then Pred was swiftly gone. Huke came in. Then Pred was back, and then Kenny was kicked out just before the event in Dallas, right? And then Pred also left about a week or so later. So that's the timeline of events. It's still kind of tricky to figure out exactly what the timeline fully was, because so much happened this year. But, for the majority of the time that Kenny was on the team this season, certainly before he was dropped, it was once again the World Championship team from last year with Pred and Dashy. Now, I will say historically, Kenny's teams, in the second, maybe third year of being teammates, but, Kenny is a stubborn player. And I think that can be a good thing, or it can potentially be a bad thing, depending on the situation. Historically, if you look at the teams that Kenny's been on, they've never lasted that long, in the sense that usually with certain teammates, Kenny will get along with and be able to play with for a long time, but Kenny definitely has his opinions, right, on the way that the game should be played, and he is absolutely not afraid to make that very clear indeed. To a very respectable level, I think, because at the end of the day, Shotzzy is undroppable. He's the face of OpTic, and Kenny could easily have a disagreement with Shotzzy in the way that he wanted to play the game and say, well, you're the warlords, you win, right? But Kenny isn't like that, and Kenny's never been like that, and Kenny will have his opinion on the way to play the game, which might not always be correct. And last year, Shotzzy kind of implies that they were pretty much on the same page, the way that Kenny wanted to play, the way that Shotzzy wanted to play for last year's game, that they also won the World Championship on, worked very well, maybe a more structured style of COD. This game, potentially, Kenny wanted to play the game a bit more structured in the way that they rotated. Shotzzy wanted to be a bit more free-flowing in the way that things went. And, yeah, Kenny has his opinions. He's not going to back down on his opinions, and he's going to make that very clear, whoever he's talking to. And that can be, a pro or a con. I think it's good that Kenny has that in the locker, but you can argue that maybe Kenny, in hindsight, should have said, you know what, Shotzzy, let's do it your way and see how things go, right? So I think it goes both ways on that front. Maybe the more interesting part about this, though, is Pred and Dashy, because you can clearly see when Shotzzy talks about Kenny, he talks about him with lots of respect, because, yeah, they disagreed and they butted heads on the way to play the game this year, but you can tell that Shotzzy still holds Kenny as a player and as a person in very high regard, even though he wasn't great at this game, and maybe his approach wasn't ideal, but maybe could still have worked had the team got on board. And that's what Shotzzy's getting at, is actually it wasn't really Kenny's fault for what happened, even though Shotzzy will feel in hindsight that he was probably right in the way that he wanted to play the game. It was more that his teammates weren't saying anything, right? Dashy, he even mentions in the clip, and we showed it briefly yesterday, where he says that Dashy was a player who likes to be told how to play, because he blacks out quite a lot, so he just likes to, know kind of what he's doing and not really think about and debate too much on the approach. But yeah, it's interesting about the dynamics that Shotzzy was just begging someone, Dashy or Pred, say something, right? Take a side. Either agree with Kenny or agree with me, and then we can actually resolve this and say, well, the majority of us think this, and therefore let's do this. And Kenny would probably be on board with that, and so would Shotzzy. That never happened. That created internal turmoil, and then it all went downhill from there.
Maybe a funny question, but what's the difference between you and... That's not a funny question. It was just more like playing like rotations, I guess, from what I remember. I think mainly it's just like how to play Rose, like ideas of like how to break and what we should be doing on Rose and shit like that. I think we couldn't see like eye to eye on like shit like that. But I was saying like earlier in the stream that like if the other two like were involved and like said and agreed with either me or Ken, then I think it would have helped like a lot of our situation that we had. Because the only issue is that was just only me and Ken like kind of saying like what we should be doing. So like, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I did it last year, kinda. I did it last year for champs. I like went over like I went over our like did I post it on YouTube? I don't think I did. I feel like Bruce just wants to be told how to play. Yeah. That's kind of how Brandon is, to be honest. Brandon's very, very smart. He actually is. But he definitely prefers whenever people tell him like what to do for sure. In a bad way, because usually whenever you usually whenever you don't see eye to eye like with teammates and shit. I mean the biggest thing, bro, I'm not gonna lie, it fucking sucks that the other two didn't like, you know, chime in, because like from there you get your resolution type shit. So it was always me and Ken, you know what I'm saying? Which is not a bad thing, or well, it is low-key a bad thing in the grand scheme of things, but some players are just like that. Like they just don't really like saying shit. And I do think the way that Ken, and I will always say this, I think that way that Ken plays is more often, like literally the majority is always the correct way of playing winning COD. And I'll always think about that. The MW3 that year, Seth was a really good teammate, bro. I'm not even trolling you. Like I'm actually kind of surprised with like how, not even on some Glaze shit. Like I feel like someone that has had a career as he had, and like he would actually like listen to anyone. I feel like that was like something that I actually like low key admired in a way. I'm not gonna lie, because like I feel like that's the worst shit as like a competitor, dude. I'm not gonna lie, is that like, for example, if Mace were to come into the team as a rookie and he gets zip it up. No. I'm actually being deadass. Mace comes into the team and like he feels like it's all, you know, just egotistical. Like you have to listen to us because of this, like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like if I was in Mace's shoes, that would just make me really uncomfortable, to be honest.
So fascinating to hear how things went from Shotzzy's perspective behind the scenes. We know that it all worked out in the end with Shotzzy and Dashy as a duo, but clearly this season there was a lot of frustration behind the scenes of Shotzzy about the way that things went, and if they hadn't found Mercules, and he helped them out a little bit. And even what he said about Scump, the fact that he kind of learns how to deal with Mercules, a younger, newer player who has his own ideas and thoughts, but might not be so keen to share them because he's teaming with some of the best in the game and wants to kind of just slot in. That would be the natural tendency, but not, of course, how it happened in the end. And I thought it was kind of nice to hear how that all transpired. But if that never happened, it would have been a very different season for OpTic. And I think that, you know, maybe Pred and Dashy, maybe Dashy less so because he's still on the team and he won champs, but certainly there were some questions there. Pred had a very interesting season, right? Because Shotzzy's basically saying that, yeah, Pred didn't really speak up and give his opinion when they were debating. That affected the team. And then when they asked Pred, hey, you know, do you want to swap roles? Do you want to go to the flex? Maybe Kenny can go to the sub. And Pred was like, yeah, I ain't doing that. So look, maybe it all worked out for Pred in the end. He goes to Falcons, gets the bag, you know, stays there for a while. But it also all worked out for OpTic because they formed a team that won champs. So, you know, very much interested to your thoughts there for the comment section below. Shotzzy's perspectives continue to be particularly interesting, and I thought this is kind of interesting as well. Champions in the CDL era anyway. These are all the rings that have been given out, and well, Shotzzy's been part of a fair few of them. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.